Hello and welcome. I'm Claire Feldman, your host and guide on this journey to thriving in private practice without the burnout. Are you a passionate therapist who's struggling with the entrepreneurial side of things? Do you wish you could serve great fit clients at times that suit you? Are you seeking financial stability so you can continue doing what you love? If so, then you're in the right place. I know firsthand the difficulties of navigating the business aspects of therapy, from building a website to managing social media, but I've made all the mistakes so you don't have to. Together we'll explore how you can build and grow your dream practice. So let's get started. Hi everyone, and welcome to today's podcast episode, which is a continuation on from the last episode, which was around Instagram marketing for therapists. So just a little bit of a recap. If you haven't listened to the previous episode, do go back and have a little listen to that. In part one, I was sharing with you how to get set up initially on Instagram as a therapist and what some of the key things are that you need to think about when you're marketing your private practice. So we talked about the importance of getting really clear on your niche and who your ideal client is that you're marketing to. We talked about the importance of brand and consistency of using your brand colors so that you become really at the forefront of people's minds, that when they're scrolling through, that they start to really recognize your brand, your fonts, your colors, even just the tone and the way you engage and speak, that people start to get a sense of you and who you are. And we also talked about how to optimize your bio and about the importance of niche specific and keywords being in there as well. So that was the last episode that was about those kind of fundamental things that you want to think about whenever you're getting started on Instagram. And in this episode, what we're going to talk a little bit more about is the actual content that you put on Instagram and some things that you want to think about in relation to kind of really creating engaging content that makes a difference. I think traditionally, how things like Facebook and Instagram were maybe viewed by therapists is that it was an add-on. And if I'm completely honest, probably a few years ago, that's what I sort of seen it as well. It was an add-on to the other things that you were doing, like your directory profile and your website. And having something like an Instagram account was just like this extra thing that you did. It was a way of social proofing yourself and for people to go and get to know a little bit more about you, but it wasn't necessarily somewhere that you would find clients or that you would source clients from. What we're seeing now, thanks to kind of COVID, thanks to the digital age, thanks to so many people now being online and engaging on platforms like Instagram and TikTok and all of these other ones, is that it is actually becoming a platform where people are sourcing clients from. Some people are using it exclusively to source clients from. So I think it's something that we can't ignore, and that if we're open to having a social media presence, that it is worth exploring, it's worth trying as one of your marketing tools and strategies. I personally wouldn't have it as your only marketing platform. I think the reality of this current age is that we need to be marketing ourselves effectively on a number of different platforms. So Instagram is just one of those ones that you want to be thinking about being on. At the end of the day, it's a free platform to use, so why would we maybe not want to lean into it? I guess the downside of it naturally is with many of these things is that it can be time consuming to create content. So it's really important to find ways of creating your content without it consuming you. I think when you first start using a platform like Instagram, things are going to take longer. Things are going to take more time for you to create, to get used to the platform, to get used to all the things that you need to do when you're creating and posting. As you get more comfortable and more familiar with it, you will find ways to create content much more efficiently. You definitely don't want this to be a platform where it's taking all your energy and you're spending hours and hours of your time each week to create content and then neglecting all other areas of your business. So it's a delicate balance to try and be found, but it is a free platform. The ability to create growth through the platform organically is great. And you can also think about once you're up, you're really clear on your ideal client, you're getting much better at the content you're creating. Once you feel like you have really gained confidence in and around that, then what you could start to explore is even experimenting with paid ads to give you even greater traction and to give you even greater exposure. But we're not quite there yet. Maybe for you, it's just about trying to fine tune, how do I use this platform more effectively? How do I create content that really does engage with my ideal client? So I think the first thing that I would encourage you to really have in your mind when we're looking at Instagram in particular is see it as a community. See it as a platform where you are trying to grow a community of your people, of your ideal clients, or of people who would be interested in your particular niche and what you have to say and what you have to share. And when we're thinking about community, what we really want is we want two-way conversations. We want to encourage engagement. We want to encourage people to respond to questions and things like that. And equally, if people do comment on your content or respond to things, that you're acknowledging that as well. So it's very much a community building platform. So how traditionally I think it would have been used when I mentioned there about it being an add-on, it would have been somewhere that therapists maybe would have thrown up a couple of posts and what I sort of call like post and ghost. So they'd have thrown up maybe an inspirational quote or thrown up a carousel post or thrown up a couple of graphics with like a 5 steps type post, 5 steps to reduce anxiety type post. But that would have been it. It would have been all education, education, education. And whilst some educational posts are absolutely very helpful, that's not how the platform is being used now. If you are on Instagram and you're following some other therapists, I guarantee you that the therapists who are doing really well on Instagram, the therapists who are attracting clients through Instagram, I guarantee you if you go in and you look at their profile and you look at their grid, their niche will be really, really specific. Their branding will be consistent. But what will be the most important thing is their messaging, that their content, their reels, their carousel posts will speak directly to their ideal clients in a really natural, conversational, and engaging way. So they're less likely to have 5 steps to reduce anxiety type posts. What their posts are more likely to be are more like, do you ever feel like this? Do you ever feel like the world is coming down on your shoulders and you feel suffocated? Like they will use language that taps into exactly how their ideal client is feeling and how they're experiencing it. And the idea behind that kind of content that really leans into how your client is feeling on a day-to-day basis or with this particular difficulty, that is the type of content that will have somebody stop scrolling. Like when they're just like they're doom scrolling through the Instagram app, that something that speaks to directly how they're feeling is the thing that's going to stop them way more than a 5 tips to or 5 steps to kind of post. So, where do you begin? If you're kind of new to Instagram, you're just trying to find your feet on it and you're sitting thinking, what the flip do I even post? The first thing that you want to think about doing is creating content pillars. So, you've maybe heard of the phrase content pillars before or content buckets. What they essentially are is your core themes or core topics that are relevant to you in your niche, and that there's like core topics or core themes that you could speak really confidently about at length. So, what I would encourage you to do is to get a piece of paper and to think about what your niche area is, and on a piece of paper, like literally brainstorm everything about your ideal client. Maybe think back to all the clients you've worked with over the last couple of months, what sorts of problems and issues that they were bringing in. And you get all of these issues, all of these difficulties, everything down on paper. And then you look for between 3 to 5. You don't really want any more or any less than that in terms of your themes. 3 to 5 themes that out of everything you've brainstormed on that piece of paper that you feel that you could confidently create content around and speak. And those become kind of your content pillars. So if I was to give you an example, say you were a therapist specializing in maybe working with chronic illness. Maybe a content pillar for you could be things like advocating for yourself around medical care and like gaslighting from medical professions and things like that. So there could be something in there around advocacy. There could be a pillar around maybe like self-care and pacing and managing your levels of energy and things like that. Maybe there could be another one around self-compassion and self-esteem. So obviously I'm just thinking of these off the top of my head, but hopefully you get the idea of what I mean. All the things that might come up commonly, people struggling with chronic illness, and then what are the things that you could draw out and that those could be your themes. Another example could be maybe you're a therapist and you're specializing in people pleasing. What could be core kind of themes that might come up for you? So it might be that there's one theme around maybe boundaries. It might be there's another theme around maybe assertion. Maybe there's another theme around self-esteem. So you're just kind of thinking about what those things could be for you. Once you have those kind of 3 to 5 pillars, you stick to them. So anytime you're coming to creating a post, creating a reel, anything you're creating, is it in line with your content pillars and your themes? This is to keep you on track, to create consistency in the type of content that you're creating, and to stop you going off down all sorts of rabbit holes, posting things that aren't really relevant to you or to your ideal client. When you're then thinking about what kind of content you're creating, like I mentioned before, that we can create educational stuff. So that might be where you're sharing a little bit more information to help clients understand the issues that they're having. So a little bit of kind of psychoeducation, that absolutely can be helpful. But I think the type of content that tends to be more engaging is the stuff that's really relatable. And the relatable content is where you're imagining like a day in the life of your ideal client, and you're imagining like maybe even having some of your clients in mind and what they're bringing into the therapy room with you and the stories that they're telling you about what's happened with them or what's come up with them. And so, for example, like with the people pleasing one, it's maybe a client who's coming in and talking about the fact that they've been invited to something and they really don't want to go to this thing, but they're racked with the idea of, they're racked with guilt at the idea of setting a boundary in place and saying no, and they're coming up with all these different lies that they would tell to try and get out of going to something that they don't want to go, and they're getting more and more stressed as the week is going on. So something like that for a client that struggles massively with people pleasing and with boundaries, you sharing a story like that in a reel or in a carousel post, obviously in a way that is maintaining the confidentiality of your client. So you might be anonymizing or changing details of the story, but you sharing a story like that as a people pleaser, if I'm scrolling through and I'm seeing this storytelling, this relatable post about not being able to say no and then trying to create all of these, elaborate lies to get out of something, because I have been there. Let's face it, that I would relate to that and I would be like, oh my God, yes, that is totally me. And that's the kind of post that I would either be liking or that I would be like commenting below going, yeah, hard relate. So that's what we mean by relatable content, where your ideal client can really see themselves in your shoes. When we're talking about engagement, so with the likes of that little example that I've just given there, what we're wanting to try and encourage as much as possible is for the people who are seeing your content to take some sort of action. So we call this a call to action. So on the likes of that little scenario that I just gave about the people pleasing, that you might, under your caption on the post, you might then be writing something like, give me a hands up in the comment if you've been in this scenario before. Or you might ask a question like, what's the biggest lie you've told to try and get out of something, to encourage like funny comments or funny stories to happen. So those are the kind of things that really encourage people to participate, encourage people to comment. And then when they do, you obviously want to make sure that you're going in and responding and replying to that then as well. So when we're looking at then, how do I decide like what, do I post a carousel post? Do I post a reel? How often do I post? All of those kind of things. What I would say in terms of the consistency and how much you post is, how many times do you think you could consistently create and schedule content that it isn't going to completely and utterly overwhelm you? So if that is twice a week, I can only post 2 pieces of content a week, then 2 pieces of content a week is better than no pieces of content a week. But the really key thing here is about consistency. The reality with a platform like Instagram is the, in air quotes, success or growth of your account is really in direct correlation to how much time and energy you spend on it. If I spent every day on Instagram and posting every day, I have no doubt my account would be much bigger and larger than it is right now, but I just don't have the capacity or the desire to do that. So I'm not doing that. So the question for yourself is, how important is it for you to grow your Instagram account, and how much capacity do you have for creating and scheduling content? And decide what that is and try your best to stick with that. It's not really going to be of any benefit to you to maybe post 3 times one week and then not post again for another month. You are going to want to try and maintain some level of consistency around what that is. So decide what that looks like for you and try to maintain that schedule as best you possibly can. When we're looking at things like what's better, is it carousel posts and reels, the platform can change an awful lot. I would say reels historically is the video content is really effective for trying to grow your audience. The video content is likely to have greater reach. So if a focus or objective is that you want to get more eyes on your content and you want to try and grow your account, that you probably want to prioritize reels. But carousel posts can be really effective and really engaging as well. Probably one of the biggest engagements I've had on any of my posts was actually a carousel post that I did just a couple of weeks ago. And I think there's something about carousel posts that people quite like to kind of swipe through and have a little read, like they're reading a story, almost like they're reading like a little article or a little newspaper. So for me, it's generally always reels and carousel posts that I would tend to create and tend to do. In all honesty, although it sounds as if a carousel post might be an easier and quicker thing to do, I actually personally find that reels are so much easier for me to create. The reason for this is that with reels, I have little videos. We call them B-roll. B-roll videos are just little videos that are captured of me out, maybe like walking the beach or walking my dog, or a video of nature or something like that. It's just a video that is stored on my phone. There's a handful of different options of those videos, and I upload them straight from my phone, straight onto Instagram Reels, and I put my text over the top of it. I add an audio, write the captions in, and so I can create a reel quite quickly. I can personally create a reel much quicker than what I would do, say, going into Canva and creating a carousel post and then having to upload it into Instagram. So again, these are things that you can play about with and find like what's easier for you to do. And like I've already mentioned, this stuff will get easier and will get quicker as time goes on. So I would prioritize, if you're kind of new to the platform, focused on growth and engagement, to prioritize your reels and your carousel posts. One thing that I didn't mention, and again, coming back to the other therapist accounts that you might be following that are doing really, really well, if I describe this to you and then you go back and look at these accounts, you're going to see that it's really, really obvious now. But they use things we call them hooks. And hooks are basically like a brief, short statement or point or phrase that captures your attention and hooks you in and makes you want to know more. So an example of one that I used recently on my own Instagram for Prosper in Private Practice, it's a reel. It's a video of me just kind of sitting down in front of camera, and the hook says POV, which stands for point of view. And then the hook itself says, you've seen another therapist charging £125 a session, and you're questioning if you're undervaluing yourself. So that statement, that was a hook that I knew therapists that are scrolling through on Instagram, they're going to say therapist charging £125, and that's going to stop them in their track. I know that's going to stop them in their track because money mindset and money is one of my content themes and pillars. It's something that can be a real sticky area for therapists, that many of us can struggle with issues around money. And I knew that would be quite a contentious thing, because I knew that there would probably be some people that would sit on the side of, oh my God, that's amazing, I want some of that. How do I charge £125 a session? And then I knew on the other hand that there would maybe be people that would really be triggering, and that would bring up a lot of, oh my God, how greedy, and how could there be people charging £125 a session? So I knew it was something that would stir up a whole range of emotions within therapists that see it. And that was exactly what happened. And there was lots of engagements and lots of comments sort of around it. So that's exactly what a hook is. A hook is that initial text that you have right at the beginning of your post, whether that be on your reel, that really first thing that people will see on your video, or it will be the very first slide on your carousel post. We call that a hook. And that is something that is just almost going to slap your ideal client, or slap someone in the face that they go, oh, and either that they go, oh gosh, that's me 100%. And they want to read more, or it's going to go, oh, this is a bit prickly, or this is a bit controversial, or I'm really intrigued to see where this post is going to go, and that they're going to go in and look for then the rest of the content of the post and the captions that accompany it. So when you are creating content, you're thinking about that, like that hook is what's going to actually bring them in and encourage them to read the rest of the post and to stay in your profile, to stay in your grid. Because the more that they stay, the more they comment, the more they like, again, more people then will see your profile, because Instagram will say that this is a account that is providing value to people, and so they will show it then to more people. So I know it's hard for me, I guess, to explain it over audio, but hopefully with that little example and that little explanation, that if you do go back and then, as I say, look at some of those accounts of other therapists that are doing really well, what you're going to then start to notice and say is, that's a hook. Okay, now I get it. And then you can start thinking about, for your ideal client, for your niche, for all those kind of pain points and issues and stories that you've brainstormed, how do I turn this example, how do I turn this story into something that has a hook right at the beginning and encourages people to then read on and read the rest of the story? So hopefully that makes sense and gives you the cogs are turning now in your brain and giving you some little ideas of ways that you could start to create content. I mentioned that reels, really, and carousel posts are the things that you might want to prioritize. The other thing that I'll mention before I wrap up this episode is the selling and promotion of your services. So the majority of what you're going to do, like 70% of the time, is the educational stuff, is the relatable stuff, is the storytelling type stuff. And then about 30% of the time is actually letting people know that you have availability, letting people know about your services and how they can work with you. Now, what I don't want you to do is I don't want you just to share a post and say, I have a slot at 10 a.m. on a Thursday, book a call. Again, people connect through emotion. People connect through relatability. So when you're selling your services, that's what you want to think about. A really good idea with promoting your services and promoting your availability is actually to take that into the stories, rather than on kind of the main profile. The reason for this is, if you imagine like your profile and your grid is sort of like your shop front or your window, stories is then sort of like what goes on at the back, in the break room and in the coffee room and at lunchtime sort of thing. So it's almost like stories is more of a like behind the scenes where people get a little bit more of you and get to know you a little bit more. So quite often in stories, you'll see therapists that are maybe sharing pictures of their office, a little video tour of where they work, maybe a little video of them out walking their dog on their lunch break, or a little photo of what they're having for their lunch, or little things like that, just to give the people watching a little bit of a sense of who you are, what you're about, what you do, kind of thing. And it helps to build that kind of connection with you and to help people see that you are just a normal human being doing normal things. But it creates, again, that relatability. So when you're in your stories, that is a perfect opportunity to then talk more about your services. But rather than just going straight into your stories with book in for a call, what you might want to do is, again, think about creating a story. So that might be sharing maybe a story about, if you have lived an experience of something that you are now specializing in, you might have a couple of little stories where you're telling a little bit about how you used to feel, how you worked through these issues, how it has impacted or transformed you now. And then that might lead into, and if you would like support with overcoming these difficulties too, then please reach out and get in touch. Or it might be that you're sharing a transformational story of a client that you've worked with in the past. Again, being really mindful of adjusting, anonymizing, and all of that stuff to maintain boundaries around disclosure. But you're sharing a story of somebody came in, this is how they were feeling, this is how it was impacting them. What we worked through together in sessions is we focused on X, Y, and Z. And then as a result, at the end, this is how they were feeling. And then leading on to your next story is, if you recognize yourself in this, if this is something that you would like to work on or to transform, then please reach out. That has much more of an impact than just telling somebody your availability. People will connect through emotion. People will connect through seeing testimonials. People will connect through seeing themselves in the stories that you tell and the transformations that you share and that you discuss. So again, when you're doing all of your brainstorming, you can also think about what examples you might have of somebody going through a journey with you and the change that was brought about by that. And if you don't have those examples, or you're not comfortable with using those examples, then it might be examples of your own story or your own transformation that you are more comfortable with sharing. So from everything that I have talked about in this episode, hopefully I haven't overwhelmed you too much. But the key things that I would really love for you to take away are remembering that Instagram is really a community. And so when you're focused on building a community, you are thinking about creating relatable content that encourages the people who see the content to take some sort of action, whether that be commenting on your post or responding to a poll or answering a question or sharing your reel with somebody who would really benefit from it, that you're building a community, and community means engagement. And that means you driving the engagement and you following up with the engagement as well. The other key thing is finding a level of consistency around your content creation that feels doable for you. The other key thing is around finding content pillars. So doing that whole brainstorm on a piece of paper and identifying between 3 and 5 themes that you can talk consistently about and feel confident around. And you stick to those themes and try not to deviate too much so that people really get used to you and what you're talking about and those kind of key areas of focus for you. Prioritize reels and carousel posts for growth and engagement. And don't forget to promote and actually sell your services, but to keep that for your stories and to use storytelling as a technique to do that. So I hope that has all been digestible. I would love to hear back from you how you have found this episode. If you are relatively new to Instagram and I've shared a lot of things and you're still thinking, oh my God, how do I do this? Where do I even go from here? I am in the process of creating a course, which is going to be Instagram marketing for therapists. And it is going to be really targeted more to maybe people who don't feel confident in using social media, who maybe you don't even know how do you go about creating a reel, or how do you even create a reel that looks aesthetically good. That if those are the kind of things that you maybe struggle with, that's what I'm focused on creating, something that is really going to take you through step by step the how-to of doing all of these things, right from writing, optimizing your bio, deciding on your brand, creating your content pillars, and then how do I actually create these reels and how do I create the engaging content with hooks and captions. The course is going to walk you through all of that. So if that sounds like something that you would be interested in, do come and connect with me on Instagram under Prosper in Private Practice. Send me a little DM and note and let me know that that's something you're interested in, and I can add you onto the waitlist for when it's ready. As of recording this, it's the 21st of February. It's probably going to be another 2 weeks or so until it's ready. So early March, it should be ready. And I will be ensuring that it's as cost effective as possible for people. So if it's something you're interested in, send me a little DM or just keep an eye out on my socials for early March when it should be ready. And that's it for today's episode. I hope you have enjoyed. If you could, do me a little favour. If you have got value from this, please do share it with other therapists that you would think would benefit. But bye for now.